Hello everyone, in this video we're going to go over plant part 3. The first question that we want to talk about is the different parts of a flower and the functions of each part of the flower. So the word function means what does it do? What is it good for? What is the use of this one thing? Okay, so let's first look at a sepal. The function of a sepal is to protect the flower. The function of petal is to attract pollinators because flowers have male parts and female parts, and the pollination needs to happen in order for flowers to reproduce. And then we have stamen. There are two parts of a stamen. There's the anther and there's the filament. The filament is to support the anther, and the anther is where the male gametophyte is, which is also called pollen. So pollen is located right here. And then we have the carpel, which is the female structure of a flower, and there are three parts to it: the ovary, style, and stigma. So the ovary is where the eggs, or you can call it the female gametophytes, are located. And those female gametophytes, they stay right here in the ovary. And the ovary is also where the seeds and fruits are produced after pollination happens. And then there's style, which is where the sperm would transfer, and then there's stigma, where pollen would land. So a pollinator comes over, its legs of a bee is all covered with pollen, and when this bee moves around, some of those pollen might land right here on the stigma, and then the pollen, which is the male gametophyte, or the gamete or sperm, those will travel down this style and then reach the ovary, and then it'll be combined with the eggs, and you get seeds and fruits. The next part is, what is the meristem tissue? Where is the apical meristem located on the plant? So meristem tissue is unspecialized, continually dividing plant cells, just like the stem cells for a human, which is also unspecialized dividing cells. These are the plant meristem tissues. So the difference between the human and the plant stem cells is that human, when we become adults, those stem cells are pretty much gone. And even if we have stem cells, we do, those are called adult stem cells, and they don't have the potential of becoming every single type of plant tissues. They're very limited on what they can become. However, for meristem tissues for plants, they have all of the potentials. They can become whatever it needs to become. So it's pretty cool. The meristem tissue is generally located at the tip of a plant. So the apical meristem is on the very top of the plant. So it allows the plant to grow taller. The next one is, what is the difference between primary growth and secondary growth? Remember, we did this in class: primary growth, secondary growth. Primary growth, secondary growth. So primary growth is anytime you have the plant growing taller or the root going deeper. That's primary growth. And the secondary growth is the leaves, extending on both sides, the branches extending on the sides. Those are called secondary growth. What are some functions of roots? The roots can do a lot of things. It can absorb water. It can support the plant. Where'd it go? No, right here. So it can hold the plant in the soil. It can store food as well. So when photosynthesis happens in the leaves, all up there, those food need to be stored somewhere so that at night, for example, the cells still need to live, right? So they still need food in order to do cell respiration, in order for cells to live. And those food are stored in the roots. And there's also the part where, let's say during winter, a lot of the trees in this area will lose all the leaves. But then, even without actually doing photosynthesis, these plants still survive for months and months and months and just fine. That's because the roots are storing the food so that it can be transported all throughout the plant to allow cell respiration to happen so that the plant can live. And at night. Did I say that? So at night, the plants need the food to live. I think I did. Okay, so they're storing food, there's absorbing water and dissolved nutrients from the soil, right? So it's important for you to remember, although plants produce food from the leaves, it also needs some dissolved nutrients from the soil, such as minerals and, some vitamins maybe. So those come into the the roots along with the water as the plants absorb water. What kind of relationship do roots and bacteria and fungi have? It's a symbiotic relationship. So symbiotic means any kind of close relationship, but moreover, it's a mutualistic relationship, meaning bacteria and fungi benefit from the roots by the roots providing it a space for living, for example, and these bacteria and fungi help roots absorb water and nutrients. Okay? So if you remember last year when we talked about our ecology unit, there was the nitrogen fixation part where atmospheric nitrogen, the nitrogen in the air, cannot be used by human or plants, but there are a lot of bacteria that can convert this nitrogen into a usable form so that the plants can absorb it and actually use it for the production of proteins and nucleic acid and all that. And then how does bacteria and fungi help roots? We already said that. What is the epidermis of the roots? The epidermis is just kind of the skin of the roots, the very outside shell of the roots. Can roots store food? Absolutely. If I give you a labeled root, you should know the root stele contains the vascular cylinder, which contains xylem and phloem. So the xylem and phloem are not just separated from each other, they also come in a bundle. So you have the xylem transporting water, and you have the phloem transporting food, and they all bundle. It's a bundle deal. And then the endoderm selects what mineral comes in the vascular cylinder. So the endoderm is a part of the roots where it kind of blocks out the toxins from entering the roots. What are the three zones of a root? We saw that earlier. Okay. So here we go. So there are three zones of the root. There's the zone of cell division or area of cell division where there are a lot of apical meristem as well. These apical meristems are located at the tip of the roots, and they are fastly dividing so that the root can keep on pushing downward. And then there's the area of elongation where there are cells that are also undifferentiated, but they tend to become longer, which also pushes the root downward. And then the area of maturation where there are actually stem cells that are dividing into different types of cells, such as the root hair. So you don't just see the straight part, there are also root hairs doing secondary growth to the side. So going from the bottom to the top, you have zone of cell division, zone of elongation, and zone of maturation. Next, what are some functions of the stem? The stem transports food and water. Water, for the most part, travels upward, and food goes up and down because we have to store food by sending food down, but then the food also needs to go up so that the top of the plant can also use that nutrient when photosynthesis is not possible to do. What are the functions of leaf photosynthesis? If you get this question wrong, I swear to God, I'm going to fail you. You won't, because you'll get it right. Photosynthesis, guys. The next one is where is each of the following located on the leaf and what are their functions? So these are different parts of a leaf, and they're very important because without all of this, photosynthesis won't happen. There will be no us. Okay, so this is a leaf. There's some veins on the leaf that allow the transport of food and water. That's pretty easy. But then if you look at the leaf structure, there are a few parts of it that's very important. There's the upper epidermis. So when you look at a leaf, the side that's facing up, that's the upper epidermis. On the upper epidermis, there's also the waxy cuticle, which is waxy. When you see a leaf, kind of reflecting all that sunlight into your eyes, it's because of that waxy cuticle. And this waxy cuticle is nice because it protects the leaf from evaporating too much water, because in order to do photosynthesis, you need water. So water is important. And then we have right underneath the upper epidermis, you have something called the Palisade Mesophyll, which are cells that do most of the photosynthesis for plants. So both the Palisade Mesophyll and Spongy Mesophyll, they both can do photosynthesis. Those little dots are trying to be shown as chloroplasts. But the Palisade Mesophyll is really interesting because they're positioned vertically. They're positioned vertically so that even when the sunlight is hitting the plant in a very small angle, they can still pick up a lot of sunlight and do a lot of photosynthesis. So that's the Palisade Mesophyll. It does most of the photosynthesis for plants. And then we have the Spongy Mesophyll, which is the other part of the mesophyll. And this Spongy Mesophyll, spongy, we call it spongy because there's a lot of airspace. This airspace allows the exchange of gas. Okay? So when we say gas exchange, whether it's for human, whether it's for plant, it's always about oxygen and carbon dioxide. It's just a matter of which way oxygen is going, which way carbon dioxide is going. For a plant, during the day when photosynthesis is happening, carbon dioxide has to enter the plant because photosynthesis needs carbon dioxide. But when cell respiration is happening at night, cell respiration is happening at night and during the day. But at night, it does most of the cell respiration, so there's a lot of carbon dioxide leaving the plant. But during the day, because we do most of the photosynthesis, and there is cell respiration as well, but there's more carbon dioxide coming in than going out. And there's a lot of oxygen released as a result of photosynthesis. So these airspace allow the carbon dioxide to go in and oxygen to go out at night, and for the oxygen to go in and carbon dioxide. Hold on. It allows the carbon dioxide to go in and oxygen to go out during the day, and oxygen to come in and carbon dioxide to go out at night. So you got to think about, what are we doing? Are we doing photosynthesis or are we doing cell respiration? And then there's the lower upper epidermis, which is also the protection layer of the plant to prevent a lot of the water loss. Then there's a really important part of the lower epidermis called the stoma, where the stomata can open and close. So when the stomata are open, this allows the gas exchange, right? There has to be holes to allow the gas to go in and out. So that's the stomata. But then there's also the part where when it's really hot outside, not all the stomata will be closed, but some of them will close up so that we don't lose as much water. There'll still be some water loss, but it's not going to be as bad. And then the remaining stomata that are open will still allow photosynthesis to happen. Did I miss anything? The veins, the veins allow the water to travel through and get to each part of the leaf, and nutrients to go, to be transported eventually to the roots. Now, two more questions. How does the opening and closing of stomata help maintain homeostasis? So the opening, is to allow gas exchange, and the closing is to prevent too much water loss. So the opening and closing together is to make sure that there's a certain level of carbon dioxide in the plants, and to ensure that the plant has a certain amount of water saved for future photosynthesis. What is transpiration? Transpiration is evaporation of water that go out of the stomata. The evaporation of water from the leaves through the stomata. How do humidity, wind, and light intensity influence the rate of transpiration? So how fast does transpiration happen, right? So transpiration is basically evaporation, except it's done at the leaf. So when it's more humid outside, right? If you were to dry your clothes outside when it's humid, it doesn't work so well, right? So humidity slows down transpiration, because the difference in water potential, or the amount of water in the air versus in the leaf, is not so different, so it's hard to evaporate. When there's more wind, it's more likely it evaporates faster, right? Let's say, just say you take a shower, but you didn't dry off very quickly, and then you stand under a fan, you will get dry a lot faster. And then there's light intensity. When it's really hot outside, when there's a lot of light, then that will increase the rate of transpiration because it's hot, and when it's hot, water evaporates faster. The last two words, one is called phototropism. Phototropism is plants tend to face toward the sun, so the leaves will grow toward whichever the direction of the sun is. So for example, if you were to grow a plant in your house that's kind of next to the window, not directly, by the window, it's next to the window, a lot of the leaves will grow toward the window. What is gravitropism? Gravitropism is, there's the word gravity. So what part of the plant responds to gravity is the roots. So the roots respond to gravity by growing downward, and the leaves respond to sunlight by growing toward the sunlight. Phototropism, gravitropism. This is it.